Good afternoon, and welcome to the 30th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Convocation. We are excited to have students, staff, faculty, alumni, community members, and very special guests joining us today. My name is Tanisha Monio, and I am a senior here at Augsburg University, studying biopsychology. I am honored to be your MC for today's convocation. Every year, I am reminded of Dr. King's message, mission, and doctrine. I am refilled and re-energized in my own journey to ensure justice prevails. Last year, I participated in this event as the treasurer of the Pan-African Student Union, and this year I participate as the president. PASU is a group here dedicated to celebrating racial justice and the celebration of the plethora of identities within the Black community. Just as a side note, I would like to ask that there is no audio or video recording, but feel free to take as many pictures as you would like. Before I introduce our first speaker, I would like to take a moment of silence to recognize, address, acknowledge, and appreciate all of those, including Dr. King, who sacrificed and lost their lives to seek justice, for social justice, racial justice, and equality for all. Please join me. Thank you. Now I would like to welcome Pastor Babette Chapman to deliver our invocation. She serves as staff at Augsburg University in campus ministries and as a collaborative partner in our community. She is the associate pastor at Redeemer Lutheran Church in Minneapolis and is an asset to our community. Please help me welcome Pastor Babette Chapman.
Good afternoon, welcome. Please stand as you are able. And recognizing that we all come to know God in our own tradition, please take a moment and then let us pray, drawing from the words of Dr. King himself. Help us to realize that humanity was created to shine like the stars and live on through all eternity. Keep us, we pray, in perfect peace. Help us to walk together, pray together, sing together, and live together until that day when all God's children, black, white, red, brown, and yellow, will rejoice in one common band of humanity. Give us strength of body to keep walking for freedom. Give us strength to remain nonviolent. Bless our keynote speaker, Dr. Roxy Manning, today as she guides us in ways of nonviolent communication. Give us renewed confidence and nonviolence in the way of love as taught by Christ. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people. And together we say, Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Babette, for getting us started off in the right direction. I'd now like to welcome Augsburg University's president, Paul Pribineau. Since joining Augsburg in 2006, President Pribineau has enhanced the university's role as an active community partner in its urban setting by identifying and embracing initiatives that mutually benefit Augsburg and its neighbors. The institution has received national recognition for its excellence in service learning and community-based education. Please help me welcome Paul Pribineau.
Thank you, Tanisha. It's my pleasure to add my welcome to this 30th annual Martin Luther King Jr. Convocation at Augsburg. This is my 12th year at Augsburg, and so my 12th of these MLK Convocations, and they are always wonderful moments for us to come together, yes, as faculty, staff, students of this community, but also the wider community who join us as part of this way of recommitting ourselves to Dr. King's life and work, and recommitting ourselves to his vision of justice and peace in our world. This year, with our distinguished guest, Dr. Roxy Manning, it seems fitting that we focus on Dr. King's deep belief that words matter in the work of our democracy. Certainly as a university, we are committed to words, sometimes too many words. And we experience day in and day out words that matter for good and for ill. We don't need to go beyond the last few days in our political lives in this country to witness how words, very specific words, deny, divide, and denigrate our fellow citizens. So today, as Augsburg University, as those gathered for this occasion, we stand together as a community to say that words do matter, and our words, as Dr. King taught us, will be words of love and peace and reconciliation and justice. May it be so.
Thank you, President Pribino. One of the great things about this celebration is a chance to hear from a community of talented and passionate artists. The next artist I am inviting up is someone who is dear to me and many other students at Augsburg, Malik Sise. Malik Sise was the vice president of PASU last year and has always used his quiet confidence and artistic abilities to be an agent of change wherever he goes. Please welcome Malik to the stage to share one of his many talents.
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing this morning? Good? Okay. I'm looking to have a conversation with my father. If I can have this conversation, I'd want it to be like this. I'm looking to make a change in my life, to acknowledge a neglected chapter that is in need for exposure. I feel that my body has been left alone often since my youth, and the head has lived near a masculine corpse. Not one that'll be buried under the love of Mother Nature, but in a purgatory called patriarchy. In other words, it's been lost. I've been trying to figure out ways to bring it back, but every time I leave to go and find it, suddenly brown walls appear with a ceiling that opens and closes when I try to continue. I think he told me something like this. I think it was called the man box. A place where secrets are kept, where a man's mind can't be free from its own body, where the mind of a man is left to fester in filth, and in order for it to survive, it has to swim through the contents, risking drowning in nothing but misogyny, hypermasculinity, and homophobia. My dad told me it's almost inescapable. I said, almost. Well, how do you escape? He said, the key is to not have the body find the mind, but have the mind find the body. See, the body is always distracted. It'll never find its way home. A wrench is nothing without its socket. And I said, well, how can it leave when it has nothing to help it escape? And then he said, look up. And what do you see? You see an opportunity to be lifted out of this mess. You just need to acknowledge when you're ready to leave. However, you must come to understand that the mind will find itself battling with the hell of patriarchy, withdrawing from the filth that kept it alive. Just know the filth isn't worth living. I said, how do I defeat this? He said, you must love yourself and not how others will perceive you. The hands that are holding this box are the hands of your mother, reaching for her last hope, hoping you will come to your senses. I said, she doesn't care for me. This chapter has been too painful to sit through. I don't think she'll ever forgive me. Then he said, here's a secret. The hands that have been holding this box have held every chapter so far. The chapter next that she's willing to help you write will tell of a free black boy loving oneself, accepting one's weaknesses, hugging a teardrop, allowing himself to love anyone he cares to be with without a need to oppress them. All you need to do is say, I'm sorry. I'm ready to start a new chapter. What do you want, Malik? I said, I know where the body is. Hope to have this conversation one day, someday. Thank you.
Malik, that was absolutely amazing and beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I would now like to invite Dr. Mohammed Salam, Director of the Pan-African Center, Advisor of the Pan-African Student Union, and Chair of the MLK Convocation Committee to say a few words. Mohammed?
Thank you, Tanisha. It is not easy to follow Malik, so I'm going to do my best. Thank you so much, Malik. I haven't seen you in some time, so it's nice to see you around campus again. Malik is our pride and joy of the class of 2017, our world-famous Malik. So he's an alum of the college. Give him another round of applause. On behalf of the MLK Convocation Committee, I'd like to welcome all of you here today as we gather for our annual Martin Luther King Day celebration. Greetings to all Augsburg students, staff, and members of our faculty that join us today. I'd like to also extend a special welcome to our guests who join us from across the metro area and from around the state. The weather outside is frightful. And I know it gets in the way from time to time, and today's one of those days. So I'm very happy to see you all here despite the conditions. As you probably know, as we've mentioned, and as it's sort of plastered on everything MLK related this year, it's our 30th time in as many years as we've decided to celebrate this wonderful event here at Augsburg. However, it's the first time that we've organized this event as Augsburg University. This year is the 12th MLK Convocation that I've attended. Also, Dr. Pribanow and I are members of the same cohort. And in many ways, the core elements that make up this year's programming have been building over many years. I'd like to think that we approach our convocation planning with the same mindset that I employ when I develop a syllabus for a class, or plan an off-campus experiential educational activity, or even in advising a student through a crisis. The first critical step in this work is to set out a clear learning objective and/or goal with the understanding that each element of our given program or an intervention in a student's life should help to build momentum towards meeting that larger overarching goal. I'd like to give you a clear example to further illustrate this point. Over the years, we've worked as a community to celebrate Dr. King through artistic expression and performance. However, beyond a celebration of King's life, our program has typically featured moments of critical reflection emerging from the lessons we've learned from Dr. King's legacy, as well as from the broader civil rights movements. In the 3 decades Augsburg has hosted this event, the MLK Convocation has featured civil rights leaders and scholars from across the country, working together with members of community organizations, local and regional, local artists, and Augsburg students, together to examine issues affecting communities of color in the Twin Cities and beyond. Nevertheless, there are times when some convocations we've hosted seem like standalone celebrations, where when the clock strikes 2:30 p.m., for those who've been here before, we head into the atrium with our exuberance for social transformation and for cake and coffee. And by the time we've cut that last piece of cake, many of us have already moved on from the day's events. Behind the scenes, we strive to ensure that your experience during this convocation is connected to other activities that take place on and off campus so that we together can contribute to building the necessary momentum required for our community to remain engaged and committed to seeing and supporting one another beyond this day. For one, it's simply good pedagogy. It's good teaching. Good opportunity for continued reflection, revisiting old ideas, and exploring new ideas through connected and interrelated experiences and action. The other piece here is that this approach goes beyond paying lip service to King's legacy. This approach demands that we activate the principles that underpin Dr. King's legacy in the work we take up on and off campus. In this, our 30th anniversary year, with the guidance of our honored guest, Dr. Roxy Manning, we have taken the opportunity to more fully realize the critical importance of learning how to care and support one another in our community in the spirit of Dr. King. Through a series of coordinated workshops and activities beginning last Friday, And concluding tomorrow afternoon, Roxy has been and will continue to be in conversation about the principles of nonviolent communication and their importance to our life and work here on campus and beyond. She has met during her time with more than 10 student organizations, or students from these student organizations, the Department of Residence Life, the Center for Counseling and Wellness, and members of Augsburg's Leadership Council just this morning, which is a group that spans dozens of university departments and academic programs. It's fair to conclude that in these last few days, we have experienced conversations that are full of purpose and reflection, and of course, altogether very energizing. Why is this critical? Well, today, prevailing xenophobic and nativist rhetoric in our country has led many Americans to embrace unfounded fear of immigrants from Latin America, refugees from the Middle East and Africa, and black and brown youth from all across this country. Instead of disrupting the forces of economic and social inequality that divide this union, sadly, many Americans have found comfort and solace in the rhetorics of hate and bigotry. The troubling events of recent years are a stark reminder that the challenge of making this country more just are perhaps further from our reality than we previously thought. The vulnerable among us are far too often the most victimized by these narratives of exclusion. It is in this regard that I ask that we use this occasion, our time together, to renew our commitment to seeing and supporting one another, both in the spirit of Dr. King and civil rights defenders everywhere, but also in response to the experiences and events that most affect our lives today. Before my time with you concludes, I'd like to take a moment to thank a number of individuals who have made this event instrumentally possible. Thank you in advance to Darnell and the Remnant. We heard them practice earlier, and I know you're going to be blown away. Again, thank you to Malik Sise for visiting campus, although it probably is beginning to feel a little strange. We have some alums who've been out for a couple of years, and so they can tell you that it's not so strange now, but 2 or 3 years from now, it'll feel more strange to come on campus. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to come back. You should always come back. Thank you, Tanisha Monio, for serving as our MC today and for our continued shared work together in relationship to the Pan-African Student Union. I'd also like to thank Sarah Cash-Darvell from the Department of Events and Conference Planning and the whole of the event staff for their hard work. Thank you, Sarah and staff. Special thanks to Indra Ramasamy, who Tanisha mentioned earlier. There will be an art installation out in the atrium that we'd love for you to spend some time reflecting and perusing on your way out. A huge thanks to John Von Fier. This year, as we built this sort of integrated multi-day program, it would not have been possible without the support of John Von Fier from the Center for Counseling and Wellness and for his commitment to our collaboration. John, without our partnership, the last 4 days would not have been possible. And then lastly, of course, I can't forget our staff in Multicultural Student Services, namely Cassidy Moore. Thank you so much for the support that you provide and for serving as the ultimate two-person convocation committee. So we're always a convocation committee of 2 and then friends and colleagues. So I couldn't be happier to work with this group of colleagues in planning this year's convocation, and I know that this is going to be a delightful, meaningful, and engaging afternoon. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Mohammed. You said it, not me. Thank you, Mohammed, for grounding us and giving us a guideline on where we're going. The highlighting of talent does not stop here. We are privileged to have with us today Darnell Davis and the Remnant. Named one of Essence magazine's top 15 gospel artists to watch for in 2014, Darnell Davis is a gospel singer, songwriter, and producer signed to RCA Inspiration. Davis, a Grammy Award nominee and Stellar Award winner from Minneapolis, founded The Remnant in 2004. The name Remnant comes from the scripture, Jeremiah 23:3. It was in January 2013, during a showcase concert in Minneapolis, when Stanley Brown, the former senior A&R from RCA Inspiration, announced Darnell Davis and the Remnant as their newly signed gospel artist. To be recognized by their peers and colleagues in their industry, Darnell Davis and the Remnant continue in their drive to revive, and inspire people of varied cultures and backgrounds through song. Please welcome Darnell Davis and the Remnant.
Okay. All right. How's everybody doing? Y'all good? You good? Can we do one thing really quick before we sing? Can you just turn and look at the person next to you and just say hi or introduce yourself or just, welcome you, say, just kind of loosen up in here a little bit. All right. We're getting ready to do this song. This song, doesn't it feel better now? Doesn't it feel a lot better now? It's kind of like if you didn't come with the person, you were sitting next to him and you might have wanted to say something, but you really didn't really know how. But it feels better now, right? We're going to do this song that simply says that we are moving forward. How many of you all are believing that we are moving forward? Yes. You move forward? All right. So now in the middle of the song, what I need you to do is you have to point forward where you're going, okay? This requires some activity, all right? All right, here we go. Come on, let's go. First thing you can do is clap your hands. Come on, clap your hands. You can turn that track up a little bit. Come on, say the time is now, say it.
The time is now.
Come on, say it.
The day has come. My worst days are over, and my best days they are ahead of me. Prosperity.
Come on, say it. Victory. Say it, y'all.
And victory
Come on, say it's flowing my way.
is flowing my way. Today is the day I claim what's mine. Everything
That was lost, eh?
that was lost,
Come on, he's giving it back.
God's giving it back to me.
So I declare, say,
I declare
I shall be
everything He designed me to be.
Now everybody in here put those hands together and tell your neighbor, tell them, say, I'm not gonna look back on yesterday and stay there, but I'm gonna look back and move forward. Come on, tell them that. Tell them, say, I'm moving forward. Come on, clap your hands, let's go. Come on, say it. Not looking back, say it.
Not looking back
On yesterday,
on yesterday,
said I'm moving.
I'm moving forward.
That's where you point right there. Come on, say it. Not looking back, say it.
Not looking back
On yesterday,
on yesterday,
said I'm moving.
I'm moving forward.
Come on, that's it right there. Take it up, y'all. Not looking back, say it.
Not looking back
Yesterday,
on yesterday, I'm moving forward.
yeah. Come on, say it.
Not looking back
Hey,
on yesterday, I'm moving forward.
now come on, tell them, say it. Said I'm moving
I'm moving forward.
forward, say it.
Forward.
Come on, forward, say it.
Forward.
That's it, you got it. Come on, point where you're going. Said I'm moving
I'm moving forward.
forward, say it.
Forward.
Come on, forward, say it.
Forward.
Come on, let's say it again. Come on, say it. I'm moving
I'm moving forward.
forward, say it.
Forward.
Come on, forward, say it.
Forward.
Point where you're going. I don't see everybody pointing. I'm moving
I'm moving forward.
forward, say it.
Forward.
Come on, forward, say it.
Forward.
And the time is right now. Come on, say it, y'all.
The time is now.
I don't know about y'all, but that just moved me. That was beautiful. I didn't know it could get better than rehearsal. One more round of applause for them, please. Without further ado, I'd like to now introduce our keynote speaker, Roxy Manning, PhD, a licensed clinical psychologist. Manning is also a member of the Implementation Council for the Center of Nonviolent Communication, steering the reorganization of this international organization. She has served as a lead trainer for several of BAE's nonviolent communication year-long programs and is co-founder and trainer for the past 11 years at the Nonviolent Leadership and Social Justice Retreat. Roxy has been using NVC in her psychotherapy practice since 2003 and has been formally teaching NVC since 2005. Roxy also currently works as a psychologist in the City of San Francisco's Disability Evaluation and Consultation Unit, which serves the homeless and mentally ill population in San Francisco. Roxy has combined her life experiences as an Afro-Caribbean immigrant, with her extensive academic and professional training, into a passion for supporting both large social change and individual healing and growth. Please help me welcome Roxy Manning.
Technology. I should have y'all sing an interlude. It's just thinking, there we go.
What does I click through a bunch? Oh, that's back.
I can come on. Perfect. I'm nervous, y'all. But I've been delighted to receive this invitation to speak at Augsburg's 30th anniversary convocation to honor the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's especially an honor for me since I so resonate with Augsburg's mission. I'd like to take a moment to read your mission statement so that we can all hold the vision of this great school while I talk. Augsburg University educates students to be informed citizens, thoughtful stewards, critical thinkers, and responsible leaders. An Augsburg education is defined by excellence in the liberal arts and professional studies, guided by the faith and values of the Lutheran Church and shaped by its urban and global settings. In choosing to be at Augsburg, whether as students, faculty, staff, or administrators, you're choosing to be at a school that aims to educate students who are informed critical thinkers, students who pay attention to what is happening in our society, students who can look past the rhetoric and arguments that have been designed to hide from us the true challenges that are facing our times. The kind of responsible leaders the Augsburg community is nurturing are people who, even having received a stellar education that will help them achieve individual success in life, will not fall into the ignorance and inaction that Dr. King described when he wrote about the complacency of those who, and I quote, because of a degree of academic and economic security, and because in some ways they profit by segregation, have become insensitive to the problems of the masses. The mission of Augsburg speaks to the dream of creating people empowered with the beliefs and skills that will lead them to work towards a world that is the realization of the beloved community of which Dr. King spoke. I resonate with the vision and mission of Augsburg. I hope to inspire you today to examine and renew the connection of your vision to the work of Dr. King. I intend to introduce you to nonviolent communication, also called NVC, a consciousness that grew out of the work of visionaries like Dr. King and Mahatma Gandhi. I believe that you can use NVC's power to augment the work that Augsburg is already committed to doing, work that not only rests upon, but also advances the great efforts begun by Dr. King and so many others. Dr. King wrote about the ultimate goal of his work, stating, "The end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community." It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opponents into friends. It is this type of understanding goodwill that will transform the deep gloom of the old age into the exuberant gladness of the new age. It is this love which will bring about miracles in the hearts of humankind. Dr. King's vision of beloved community resonated with a young clinical psychologist in the 1960s, Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. He was working in Detroit during the 60s, during the times of both civil unrest and peaceful nonviolent demonstrations. He was struck by the capacity of Dr. King and so many who were committed to nonviolent action to maintain their commitment to peace in the face of inhumane treatment. Inspired by the power and the hope that he experienced in witnessing their unwavering courage, Dr. Rosenberg developed over time the approach known today as nonviolent communication. Dr. Rosenberg didn't invent anything new in NVC. He gathered together philosophies and methodologies from numerous cultures, communities, and disciplines, and combined them into a form of communication designed to support peace. Dr. King described what NVC invites us all to do, which is, and I quote, "to create peace at 3 levels and have each of us know how to do it. First, within ourselves. We can be peaceful within ourselves when we're less than perfect. Second, between people. NVC shows people how to create peace within themselves and at the same time, how to create peace, how to create connections with other people that allows compassionate giving to take place naturally. And third, in our social systems, to look out at the structures that we've created, the governmental structures and other structures, and to look at whether or not they support peaceful connections between us, and if not, to transform those structures." I imagine you can see the connection between Dr. Rosenberg's vision of creating peace at 3 levels and Dr. King's vision of beloved community. I'd like to share a little bit about how Kingian nonviolence and NVC are connected. Both Kingian nonviolence and NVC offers us ways to think about creating social change. In the face of oppressive conditions, Kingian nonviolence focuses on the involuntary harm that groups of people have historically borne. In the short term, it seeks to prevent involuntary harm and to make that harm visible to all, both those impacted by and those benefiting from those conditions. Kingian nonviolence focuses on identifying targets for change. The NVC approach is consistent with Kingian nonviolence. It also seeks to prevent harm from happening. It looks not just at the systems that create harms, but also looks at the values and needs that are motivating those individuals within the oppressive systems in order to find leverage for ending the harm. The longer term, I need water. Thank you. Y'all breathe with me. The longer-term goals of NVC and Kingian nonviolence also complement each other. Kingian nonviolence seeks to enact more wide-ranging social change by engaging in direct action. Each person who sat at a lunch counter, enabling the world to see the hatred and violence that they experienced, raised the consciousness about these issues by allowing the events to unfold. I am still nervous. The dramatic spotlight on the abuses that each activist suffered made it impossible to ignore the harm that was being done. By shining this spotlight, Kingian nonviolence seeks to initiate national dialogue. That pressure would then force those with structural power to the table, where better systems and terms could be identified that benefit all. Nonviolent communication complements the Kingian strategies of direct action by providing a template for how people can talk and truly understand what is important to each one who's engaged in dialogue. NVC uncovers the motivations that keep people engaged in perpetuating the harmful strategies that advance their interests at the expense of other people. Once it's clear what is truly important to both sides, they are then helped to creatively generate new strategies that can then meet needs for all. And ultimately, Kingian nonviolence and NVC strategies are focused on creating beloved community, a world where we have healed from the wounds and the artificial separation that have been imposed upon us, those impacted by the oppressive conditions and those benefiting from them. They both seek to create a world where we see the fundamental humanity of each person, where, trusting in our shared humanity, we create systems that can work for all, systems that celebrate our difference, but serve all life fully. So what is NVC? I've been following this approach for 14 years, and I'm still learning a lot about how to integrate it into my life and into my social justice work. So I'm going to give you all a brief overview, and then I'm happy to talk more about it and answer questions tomorrow in my Q&A session that's going to be right here, same time, same place, okay? At its heart, NVC is a consciousness, a way of thinking about and approaching life. It's a state that moves away from blame, that believes in the interconnectedness of life. The NVC approach fundamentally believes that by connecting to our shared humanity, we can find ways to care for all of life in a way that is free from violence in any of its forms. There are numerous implications for this belief in our shared underlying humanity, and I'll explore some of these implications as we continue. If this belief in the interconnectedness of life is the entire picture of what NVC paints, there are several important pieces to the puzzle that helps us to build this picture. They give shape to our thoughts and our actions so that we can respond to life in ways that acknowledge our shared humanity. By focusing on these elements, we have support in moving to a state that, free of blame, judgment, and violence, empowers us to work towards the changes that are needed to create a world where everyone has the resources that they need to thrive. These basic elements of the NVC model help us focus our communication when we attempt to connect with others, or even it supports our connection with ourselves. We're supported in living in a place from NVC consciousness when we seek to differentiate our observations, what we see, experience, and think, from our judgments, interpretations, and evaluations. When we're able to separate our feelings, the emotions and sensations that we experience, from our thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. When we focus on connecting to our needs, the core values that motivate all our actions, as distinct from our strategies, the actions we take to attend to what is important to us. And finally, we're more likely to live from a place of NVC consciousness when we focus on making requests, asking for what would meet our needs in a way that honors the choice and autonomy of those around us, that empowers them to also meet their needs, rather than demanding that our needs be met without care for the choice and the impact of others around us. So now that you've had a very brief introduction to what NVC is, I want to return to the challenge of this talk. How do we reconnect to the heart of Dr. King's dream? How can nonviolent communication help us return to the powerful vision of social change for which he strongly advocated for and for which he died? How can we inspire ourselves to stand up for social change? Every time I hear stories from the civil rights movement, every time I look at the images from that time, I wonder about the people. I wonder how the ordinary people, people who were just like you and me, how were they able to do the things that they did? I think about our current times when so many of us are powerless. When I hear so many people say, I'm just one person. The government has all the power anyway, so nothing's going to change. When I see people numb out, check out, and then fall into despair and hopelessness. In those moments of despair, I reconnect to the stories and the images of the civil rights movement times, and I feel inspired. And I want to invite you to do the same. Take a moment to look at these two pictures. I'm hoping y'all can read them. I actually want you to choose one column, just randomly choose a column. Look at the picture and then read the text that goes with that picture. Then take a moment and think about what it took for the people described to be willing to stand up, to be willing to risk so much to face the challenges that they did. And then I want you to turn to your neighbor and share with them, first, what picture did you choose? What did you connect to? And what qualities do you think those civil rights activists had that made it possible for them to do what they did? I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Okay, I'm going to invite you back. When I look at images like this, I think of Fannie Lou Hamer, the youngest of 20 children in her family. A woman who at the age of 6 began picking cotton in the fields, who at the age of 13 had to drop out of school and work in the fields all day to support her family, picking 200 to 300 pounds of cotton every day. What enabled a woman like Fannie Lou Hamer, who by all accounts was a woman who was the definition of no structural power, no economic power, no political power? What enabled her to stand up and answer the call to help people access their civil rights? What made it possible for her to travel away from her home to help Black people register to vote, knowing that she was risking her job and her home, and indeed losing both because of her choice? What made it possible for her, despite being given a hysterectomy by a doctor against her will, despite being beaten so badly for helping people register to vote that it took her over a month to recover, to go back out and return to helping people to vote? What helped this woman with little education, one who President Johnson publicly mocked as that illiterate woman, to stand up on national television and speak for the rights of her people? And what makes it difficult for us to do the same? I want you to turn again to your neighbor and share. What prevents you from standing up, from taking the risks, taking the chance to act in ways that can actually create change? What qualities can you develop that would empower you to do so? What support do you need to be able to do this? Again, turn to someone and share. And I'm going to call you back again. When I ask this question, many people share so many important pieces that they see the civil rights activists had and that they also long for. I hear people mention needs like those that are part of NVC, such as community that is willing to stand for them, such as a conviction that they will have support if they are attacked and vilified for taking action. They mention the longing for vision, for a belief that with perseverance, change is actually possible. All those needs are deeply important, but one that I believe will empower us all, that we all need to take action, is a deep connection to love. So many of us fight against what we don't want. We demonize people that we view as our enemy. No matter what our politics or our beliefs are, so much energy is directed towards making someone else wrong, on seeing other people as our enemy. We've come to believe that our strength, both our strengths as individuals and our strengths as community, comes from declaring in the most absolute, reductionist terms that those who are against us are bad and those who are with us are good. Dr. King spoke out against the dangers of this framing of the problem, that successful change comes from hating our enemies. Instead, I want to share what he said about hate and love, words that seem even more true today. He said, upheaval after upheaval has reminded us that modern man is traveling along a road called hate, in a journey that will bring us to destruction and damnation. Far from being the pious injunction of a utopian dreamer, the command to love one's enemy is an absolute necessity for our survival. Love, even for our enemies, is the key to the solution to the problems of our world. Those were radical, powerful words. When Dr. King talked about the need to love our enemies, he identified several components that would make this possible. He named developing and maintaining the capacity to forgive as a mandatory requirement to be able to love. He talked about the importance of separating the deed from the doer. In his words, noting that the evil deed of the enemy neighbor, the thing that hurts, never quite expresses all that he is. Dr. King insisted that as part of loving our enemy, we must seek not to defeat or humiliate him, even when we have the capacity and power to do so. But in Dr. King's enumeration of what is necessary in order to love our enemies, I was still a little uncertain about how to do that, right? How do I love a man who walks into a church service where he is welcomed by churchgoers and proceeds to kill 9 innocent people while shouting racist ideology? How do I love a man who drives his car into a rally of peaceful protesters, killing 1 person and injuring 36 others? How do I love people who set off bombs during a marathon, killing 3 people, causing 16 people to lose limbs, and injuring hundreds of others? How can I love those who hate me? I've gotten some insights on how to do that through nonviolent communication. It's impossible to love my enemy when I believe that their every action is motivated by hatred of me. So many of the systems in our modern world are designed to make us believe that we hate each other. Our elected officials and our political pundits rail against the liberals that don't respect the rural community, the coal miners that hate the elitist town people, the poor man who hates the immigrants. They continuously set us against each other. If I believe their assertions that your actions are only motivated by hatred, then I must hate you in return. And that sets off what Dr. King described as the chain reaction of evil. Hate begetting hate, wars producing more wars. Instead, I turn to one of the core beliefs of nonviolent communication. Every action we take, every action, no matter how heinous it is, no matter how harmful the impact, is an attempt to meet a need. If I can truly believe that we all share the same needs, if I believe that, as Dr. Rosenberg stated, that violence is a tragic expression of an unmet need, I can find a path to loving my enemy. I don't make any claims that this is an easy path. In developing my NVC practice, in learning to love my enemy, I had to make peace with the many instances in my life when it was easier to hate my enemy, or even hate myself, in order to find some way of moving through life. For instance, I think of all the years that I stopped writing, when I was afraid of being judged as too stupid, not good enough, because a white professor when I was in college thought the paper that I wrote that was so well written must have been plagiarized because black people don't write like that. It was easier to give up, to hate that professor for hating black people, for hating me, and to hate myself for not being good enough, for not being special enough to be able to convince him otherwise. When I began learning NVC, I became curious about him. I wondered, I'm still wondering, what could have led him to make that comment, to give me a failing grade, if it wasn't because he hated me and hated black people? I don't truly know what the answer is because I'm not inside his head. But I can imagine if every action is an attempt to meet a need, and if needs are universal, what would lead me to take that action? I began to connect with, as unlikely as it seems to me, what it might have been like to have never gotten a great paper from a black college student. Especially in those days when the numbers of black college students that he met were very few. What would it have been like to have been told over and over and over again as a white person that black people were intellectually inferior? What was it like to believe genuinely that this was true and to have that message supported by the academic institutions in which I attended and in which he worked? I could imagine that he so much wanted to respond to my paper, which was so far outside of his experience, with academic integrity. I could even imagine him thinking that by holding me accountable, he was actually supporting me, that he was inspiring me to change and to work towards developing the skills that would support me in life. Did this excuse his behavior? No, right? Not at all. Did it make it any less painful for me to imagine this? No. But it did invite me into compassion for his experience. It helped me connect to my mourning, both for him and for me. I am able to not only be angry at and grieve the impact that his words and his decision had on me, the years of self-doubt and lost confidence. I'm also able to grieve the torment of his experience, of being so stuck in a world that limited his ability to see and be able to celebrate everyone, of imagining the horror of trying to act out of integrity and instead realizing that his actions were so far removed from his intentions. Wondering about what his needs might be if he didn't actually hate me helped me to cut short that chain reaction of evil, to change my internal dialogue so that my only options were no longer just to hate him and hate myself. Instead, I could wonder, how could I change the systems that created the conditions in which his attempts to act in integrity fell so disastrously short and were so clearly harmful to me and to my attempts to create and to grow and to be celebrated for who I was. We can apply the exact same process, the same curiosity about motivating needs, to even the most heinous crimes. When I think of the man who murdered 9 African Americans, including 3 elderly people over 70, if I am committed to loving my enemy, then I need to think about what, besides hate, could possibly have motivated him. I ask myself, what would ever motivate me to want to take my own life? And to try to do so after killing 9 people just because they belonged to a group that was different than my own? We don't like to think about these questions. It's so much easier to hate the doer, to conflate the doer with the deed. It's much easier to go along with the fiction that some people are just evil. To answer Dr. King's call is to step out of the false security of judgment and distance. It's to step into a world where no one is just evil, where anyone, including every single one of us, could take tragically violent actions. What makes it possible for me to take this stretch, to imagine myself in even his shoes, is my conviction that unless I learn to love my enemy, the chain reaction of hate will continue to spread. So when I try to imagine his motivations, I let myself imagine the depth of despair that would lead me to want to take my own life. I imagine being drowned in messages from early childhood that say that I'm not good enough, that I deserve to be beaten and abused. I imagine the desperation to find some way to value myself when I can't find community and belonging of my own. When I've attended over 7 schools in 10 years and I failed out of school. When mental illness sets me apart from other people. When I feel estranged from my family and community. I imagine the shaky relief that I might feel when someone offers me the possibility of self-esteem, that I can finally see value in myself if I can just imagine that other people are less than me. I imagine the hope that I could feel, the hope that other people could see me as brave, as courageous, as doing something valuable, if I'm willing to take action to demand that other people tell me are the cause of my suffering and the cause of suffering of people like me, if I take action to tell those people that we're not going to take this any longer. I can imagine the endless war inside of my soul between thinking that my salvation, belonging, and respect will come if I harm other people, and thus leads me to act in violence. And yet, when I still feel unending pain and isolation and despair, and thus want to kill myself. When I think of the enduring pain that he experienced, I find it easier to have compassion for him while still fiercely hating his actions. While still hating the systems that perpetuated the poverty and the brutality that he experienced throughout his life. Hating the systems that continue to perpetuate the message that one group can only survive at the expense of another. I worry that in saying this, that some people will say this is just an excuse for unexcusable behavior. And I want to be clear that by no means are we condoning this behavior. By no means are we saying that the only action that somebody can take if they're raised in those kinds of circumstances is to turn to hate. The act of finding compassion and learning to love our enemy, of connecting with our shared humanity, is not about excusing violent behavior and allowing it to continue. Instead, it's a practice that focuses on shining the light on the real causes of violence and hatred. It's about taking action to end immediate harm, to protect the innocents, while also looking for the humanity in each other and trying to find ways to engage that humanity so that, with all of our needs better met, everyone is able to turn towards love. I can spend a lifetime hating each killer of innocence, every single person that comes up that's profiled in the news. I can choose to sentence every single one of them to death, to the death penalty. And if that's all that I do, nothing changes. If I don't focus on the poisoned soil that keeps sprouting these damaged plants, no matter how often I cut down those plants, new damaged ones will shoot up. Healthy plants don't grow from poisoned soil. And so instead, I try to focus my attention, with the support of nonviolent communication, on the areas that Dr. King so rightfully identified as the places where we can create change. I want to end with a quote from Dr. King. Although this quote focuses on ending segregation, we can apply it to ending all the inequities of power, the resources that are unequally distributed, of ending war, of ending the environmental problems that threaten all of us. Dr. King wrote, "Time is cluttered with the wreckage of communities which surrendered to hatred and violence. For the salvation of our nation and the salvation of mankind, we must follow another way. This does not mean that we abandon our righteous efforts. With every ounce of our energy, we must continue to rid this nation of the incubus of segregation. But we shall not in the process relinquish our privilege and our obligation to love. While abhorring segregation, we shall love the segregationist. This is the only way to create the beloved community." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roxy, for sharing your thoughts, wisdom, knowledge, and perspective with our community. That was extremely inspiring and impactful. This is a little off script, but I just kind of wanted to reflect on what I personally, as a POC woman and leader and future medical provider, got from what she had to say. I think that inhabiting this skin, or being someone who loves and has people of color really close to them, when someone commits a heinous crime or act of hatred on you, it is so painful and it's so personal, and it seems like almost impossible to have empathy or compassion for that person. And I think that's why Dr. Martin Luther King was so special. It seemed like when we reflected, it was like I personally did not have the capacity to view people the way he did. I was like, I could never. When I reflect on my life and growing up in a predominantly white town and going to a predominantly white high school and living in a society that perpetuates hate towards people who look like me, the act or thought of taking into consideration what they needed seemed impossible because it hurt so bad. So I think that nonviolent communication and what Roxy talked about kind of gives you the first step in achieving that Dr. Martin Luther King mindset and perspective, which seemed so distant or immortal almost. It wasn't something that the average person was capable of. So I really appreciate that, and I plan to use that and do a lot of analysis. And shameless plug, if you want to continue that analysis, come tomorrow, Roxy mentioned, right here, same time, 1 to 2:30, and have a roundtable discussion and further reflect on that. So I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciated that, and let's give her another round of applause. We'd also like to close by thanking our partners on campus, Office of the President, Event and Conference Planning, John Von Fier for the Center of Wellness and Counseling, Residence Life, Aviance, Marketing and Communications, our performers, and the MLK Convocation Planning Committee. Please, on your way out, stop and show Indra Ramasamy thank you and appreciation, a recent graduate of Augsburg University, for her amazing art installation commemorating the 30th anniversary of the celebration in life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A special thank you for all of you for coming out today and trekking through this weather to join us in reflection and celebration. Let's take the spirit of this day to use it to bring love and light to our neighbors, compassion to our neighbors and friends in our city. To close us out, please welcome back Darnell Davis and the Remnant.
All right. That was an awesome speech. Okay, this is what I need you guys to do as we get ready to go. Can you guys stand on your feet and can we just go out just celebrating? Is that all right? All right, let's go. Come on, hit that track. Let's go. Come on, clap your hands, clap your hands. Come on. Now I want you guys to do some, make some noise up in here. Come on, make some noise. Come on, clap your hands. Come on. We want to encourage you to live. Come on. All right, here we go. Come on, ladies. Come on, sing it.
It's not over. You're just beginning to live. Though you lost everything.
Come on, it's not the end.
It's not the end. He has a plan, and it's just for you. So you don't have to be afraid to live again.
Now, come on, say, get up.
Get up. You have life to live.
Come on, say, you will live again, sir.
You will live again.
And tell them, say, you will smile again, say.
You will smile again.
Yeah. Come on, tell them, this is at the end, sir.
This is not the end. Just live again. Live again.
Now, come on, say, you can't give up, say.
You can't give
You
up.
gotta keep fighting.
You gotta keep fighting.
Come on, tell them.
Get your second win and live.
Tell them
Live.
your battle will be
Your
greater.
ladder will be greater.
Because you are much stronger.
Cause you are much stronger.
Come on, say, soak it up, say it, y'all. Good.
So get up and live.
Yeah. Come on, y'all. Say live.
Live.
That's it right there. Come on, tell them, say live.
Live.
That's what you gotta do. Come on, say it again. Say live, say live.
Live.
Come on, soak it up, say it.
So get up and live.
Yeah. Come on, say it again. Come on, tell them, say live, say live.
Live.
We want to encourage you today to live. Come on, say it.
Live.
Yeah. Come on, say live.
Live.
Soak it up, say it.
So get up and live.
You have life to live. Come on. Say it. Live, say it.
Live.
Come on, say it again. Say live, say it.
Live.
Yeah. Come on, live.
Live.
One more time, say it.
So get up and live.
Make an L and put it in the air. Come on and tell them. Say live.
Live.
There it is. Come on. Say it again. Say live.
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 So get up, sir.
So get up and live.
Come on and turn to your neighbor and say live.
Live.
Hey. Come on. Turn to somebody else and say live.
Live.
That's it right there. You got it. Come on. Say live.
Live.
Here we go. So get up, sir.